Next up is our school and community section where we call for public participation. And Emily, if I could turn it over to you.
Sure. Welcome. The board welcomes public comment at our meetings. When speaking, we ask that folks in person or online state their name and address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in order to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. And give people a notice when their time is up. We're happy to hear from the community, but it should not be expected that the board or administration will respond during our meetings. It's not a time for public discussion. If necessary, we will contact the community member for follow-up. And if you're joining us via Zoom tonight, please raise your hand and you'll be called upon. Is there anyone in public in person who would like to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom, Wendy, who would like to speak? There's some. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Emily. And there'll be another chance for the public to ask questions later on in the agenda. And with that, I would like to turn it to Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. It's great to be here tonight. We are here for our second year in a row to present our academic achievement report for last school year. And so we used this format last year. It was well received by the board. So you'll see some very familiar slides. You'll see a few new ones, but we're excited to do that. This is all part of our holistic accountability. So we make our data very public in Madison as we have, and this is available online as well. And this presentation will be obviously taped and shared and available for the public later on. Probably best, unless there is a burning question as we go through, to save questions. Our administrators will stay through the end and be available to answer any questions, or maybe some things that come up that might be answered in a future school. We're going to start with Land High School. They have quite a bit of data to share. Actually, Gail is.
Doing good introduction.
Gail's going to start us off when you brought him up. Jump into that. So Gail starts.
Thank you, Dr. Cook, and thank you for your time this evening. And as we present tonight, I also want to acknowledge all of the administrators in the room who have spent an incredible amount of time pouring through results and talking to teachers and coordinators and really kind of figuring out what our next steps are and where do we go from here. So thank you all for your time and attention. So as we present this evening, we're going to pretend that our clicker works, but it's not. Let's see. No, when do you want to click it by hand? Here, I'll go over. So this evening, as we have done in the past, we are presenting a district overview or district summary, and then we'll go to the school level summaries to give you a lot more detail on what they have discovered. And in addition to the school level summaries, we're always developing an action plan for improving our scores and examining what we can do in the upcoming year. So I'm pleased to share with you some of the information that we have in front of you this evening. Hopefully you got the presentation in advance. But this slide is really talking about our student participation in the assessments themselves. So where you see the peach color in this slide presentation, you will note that that is under the threshold of 95%. We always want our students to be able to participate 95% or more, and that does have a lot to do with the accountability index. So you can see progressively from 2018, 2019, 2021, and finally this year to 2022, we have had very strong student and participation in our assessments. And I think by and large that really came with messaging, both on the building level and the district level, that encouraged all students to take part in the assessments. We only have one slight peach color, and that is based on the science assessment, where we fall just under that threshold for our students' high needs subgroup, which high needs is EL, English language learners, special education students, and also students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And that little subgroup is a very small number. So something to keep in mind in Madison, as we have a smaller enrollment than some other districts, just 1 or 2 students can actually make a difference in meeting a threshold like 95%. So that's where you see that each color. So it doesn't mean that it's a group of 10 that didn't participate. It's really a very small number. We administer an assessment every year for our students who are English language learners. That's called the Lost Links. We had 100% participation, but it's important to note that this is a population that sometimes moves around and changes a bit. So out of the 39 students, 28 of those students were the same students from the previous administration. So that's important to note, that we have a changing population sometimes as our students who are English learners come to Madison and might be moving to another location. So you will see that where we have accountability information from prior years, we put it in. So you can see the number of points that we've earned on the state average. Unfortunately, we didn't receive the state information for 2020, 2021. So that was our prediction of the number of points that we earned. And this year we don't have that information yet. So you will hear from us again when we're sharing the accountability report, and that information will be filled in at that time. So I'm going to turn it over to TJ Salutare. I can do it from here if you're comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Okay. Thank you, TJ.
Thanks, Joe. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some of our results on our standardized assessments, as well as for your support over the course of the year. We really appreciate that. The first slide we wanted to share was in regards to the Next Gen Science Standards Assessment. And you could see in this slide, it's just a comparison of our student performance over the past 3 years from the junior class from 2019, 21, and 22. You could see in the box on the right that has an orange color, the percent of students who were at or above goal over those 3 years in that particular timeline. Is that working? Is the front arrow? Awesome, thank you, guys. This next slide shows a comparison of our performance in regards to the DIRT B. You can see where we ranked Madison with the 53.1%, and you can see where we compared to all the other schools in our DIRT. The findings, which were actually pretty interesting, just informational in the top left. There are 3 particular bands that are assessed. You could see the percent of students who were proficient in those particular bands. One thing that we did find curious was the impact of remote learning. When these students were freshmen in 2019 to 2020, 4 of the 6 biology classes freshman year actually transitioned to all online learning. So we think that could have played a role. Time on test is also an interesting piece of data that we looked at. It doesn't look like a significant difference, but in the total amount of time, it's a pretty significant difference in the amount of time the students actually average to complete this assessment. We have a plan that we think will result in some positive increases in our scores. You can see some of them on the right. The 2 I would say that are the most important as we go into the school year is the second bullet on the right, which is the interim assessment block. We are requiring each teacher to administer at least one referred to as IAB during their courses, which gives students the actual test experience to ensure that students are comfortable and understand that this is an important assessment for our school and for our district. We're also, while we look at test administration, if you notice the big spike last year or 2 years ago in our test scores, we had a completely different format for testing where we had our students only come in. That was the only thing they did. was take the science assessment as opposed to school going on and shutting different parts of the school down so students can actually take the test during the school day. We do think that played a significant role in the performance 2 years ago in comparison to the 2019 and 22 performance. We are looking at some options for not only test location, but the actual testing day for students to see what could be the best fit for them in this assessment situation. And then we're actually looking at ways to recognize and celebrate student performance. You know, the NGSS assessment to juniors isn't one of the more motivating assessments. You know, when you look at what SAT and AP and UConn courses, those assessments are without doubt high priorities for our students. We want them to understand the importance of this assessment as well moving forward. The next bit of data is a transition to the AP exam participation, and Jennifer Hawley, our school counselor coordinator, was supposed to present tonight. She got ill this morning and had to go home early. It was probably better for all of us not to be here this evening. So I told her I would jump in and take her slides. I think there's some really good data here. If you look, this is a comparison of the 2018 through 2022 AP exam participation and score detail. You can see that there's been a lot of consistency over the last 5 years, and the scores have been very consistent. That top little bar that's going across, that's our enrollment decline in number of students. And we've obviously gotten much smaller over time at the high school level. And although that enrollment is dropping, the number of exams and number of students tested is actually increasing over time. So that's actually very positive. Our plan moving forward is to encourage our students to participate in both AP classes as well as taking the AP test in May. Both the AP teachers and school counselors will continue to inform students throughout the year about the benefits of these courses prior to course selection and prior to the May test dates. The next slide just shows trends in AP scores, and this slide shows that most of our students do score a 3 or higher on these assessments, you know, and you can see from grades 20, 21, and 22. One update, just informational, we proposed an AP support pilot last year to the Board of Education, and we did run that pilot this year in our AP chemistry class and AP Latin class. And just as a very brief update, AP Latin is typically very low enrollment, you know, number of students who actually take that course. We only had 2 students attend the actual support sessions. One of them didn't actually take the AP exam, you know, for some medical reasons. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get much data from just 1 student participating. In the AP chemistry support, 26 students out of 29 actually participated in that support. But it was interesting, test scores really remained very similar to the previous year. So moving forward during our November professional development, one of the focuses, Mrs. Hawley and I will be meeting with all the AP teachers. And we're looking at putting a plan together to see if we can offer support after school. And the support that was offered in the chemistry and Latin classes was actually after school and on weekends. And it was a pretty significant amount of time, but we're looking to put something together for all of the AP courses that we offer, which is 20 courses. So we'll be working on that moving forward. And we're going to really focus on the teachers using a lot of the materials that are available in the AP classroom during that support to offer our students some opportunities to not only be prepared for, but hopefully motivate them to actually take the test in May as well. Travis?
Thank you, TJ. So the next slide shows a visual of how our students on the spring SAT performed in comparison to the DIRG and the English language arts portion of the SAT. And you can see from looking at this slide that we were tied with Cheshire for 9th within the DIRG and are essentially just a little bit above the middle of the DIRG in that particular assessment. Oops, I went too far. The following slide is showing the trend of the last 3 years that the test was given. And this is showing how our scores again compared to our district reference group as well as to the state. So if you look at that, you'll see that again, our comparison within the 3 is very similar through that period of time.
So similar to the slides that Brian just reviewed, the SAT math data is also compared in a similar manner. So in this chart, you'll see that we were 5th in our DIRG for where our SAT math scores ranked. And then similarly to ELA, you'll see the trend data over the past 4 years on how we compared not only in the DIRG, but also in the state on our math scores.
So after we got preliminary results this summer, our department leads and coordinators met with administration and began looking at ways to work, identify areas for growth and also how to work with students. And you'll see that in both content areas, English language arts, as well as mathematics, across courses in grades 9, 10, and 11, teachers are working and have been already since the start of the year, working with students on strategies that will help them have a better familiarity with tests moving forward.
And to just highlight that work a little bit more specifically, you'll see that there was basically 2 tasks that took place over the summer. The math and the English coordinator met to begin to springboard and gather some resources so that teachers could actually implement some sample test type questions and make it part of just their regular curriculum and what they do in their classroom. And we hope to continue that work throughout the entire school year. Thankfully, we were able to add a math coach this year to the high school, so we're very excited about that. So we're hoping that with the math coach and the reading specialist, that they can help to continue to gather these supports for teachers, be able to implement where it's appropriate. So we don't want to take time to actually pause and say, like, today's going to be SAT review day. That's not what we're looking to do, but instead just where it organically fits already in with what we're teaching, showing a sample type question, showing a strategy on how to approach a particular question. And so we think that these initiatives will really help to increase our scores. And I think that's it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pulsing. So the district also participates in the Smarter Balanced Assessment in grades 3 through 8. That is an annual assessment for all students. And we have the results of that forthcoming. This is a breakdown of the Smarter Balanced Assessment by subject and by grade. And you can see the past couple of years of performance information. Important to note in 2018-19, in grades 3 and 4, we did a little action research project. We actually moved back the testing window for 3 weeks. And that was the first time that we did any kind of exposure to the format of the test itself. So for those 3rd and 4th graders in 2018-2019, those scores reflect a significant jump in the students' scores and the percentage at and above goal. And the plan was that in 2019-2020, we would apply the same methodology to grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. However, pandemics happen, and we did not have the opportunity to do that in the following year. But in 2020-2021, we did expose our students to the format of the test. They did have the opportunity to see what we call interim assessment blocks. And that helps them to understand not only how the questions formed, but the ways that they answer a multiple choice question, something that they're not exposed to in our curriculum very frequently, and also how the mechanics of the test itself works. So you will see in this slide, we looked at growth between 21 and 22, and that's the green and the red over on the right-hand column. But we also felt it was important to take a look at the growth between 2019 and 2022. The state has also done a fair amount of research looking at that as well. This clicker really hates me. And no, I don't know why. We need a new clicker. You'll see a budget request for new clicker. And this is the growth between 19 and 2022. The state has put together what they call a pandemic recovery dashboard. And that indicates for all districts around the state whether or not they are progressing in the levels of achievement to recover from the pandemic. And Madison has shown quite favorably in that dashboard. So when you take a look at all grades combined for ELA, this is the grades 3 through 8 compared to the DIRG, and you will see we're in the smack dab in the middle in ELA. And you will also take a look at, again, we always compare ourselves to the DIRG and to the state. The yellow bar is Madison, the blue bar is DIRG B, and the red bar is the state. This is a breakdown per grade level. So you can have a sense of how the grade levels are doing. We did have a notable dip in grade 8 compared to the year prior. And we will be addressing that in the time to come. Here's our math results, same comparison using grades 3 through 8 and the district averages. And then again, you can see in grade 8 that where we compare to the DIRG and to the state. Oh, thanks. So this is a breakdown again of every grade level. So this is where we take a look at the group or the cohort, and you will see that we have a little skip in our colors. Again, we had a skipped year during the pandemic. So if you take a look at following a group to see how they're doing over the course of time, you may want to take a look at that pink color. 2017, 18, you can see our third graders at 63% at or above goal. Then you can follow that pink to 18, 19 in fourth grade. You might recall that's the year that we did our treatment or our action research. We moved back that window, and then you can see that same group again after the pandemic in 2020, 21 at 70% and then 71%. So that's how you read that progression in that chart. And I'm going to turn it over to my friends at Paulson, and I'd like to introduce Catherine Hart and Martha Curran. Thank you. And it works.
I got the lucky charm.
You too. Getting rid of this.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. So Martha and I will summarize the results from Paulson. And I'm going to start off with the grade 8 science assessment that was administered to all of our eighth grade students. And you can see, as Gail had just mentioned, that we're comparing the results from 2019 to 2021 to 2020 to 2022. And I think over time, over the course of those years, our students have become more familiar with the testing format. Our curriculum is more closely aligned and includes test questions that are woven in, as the high school also alluded to as well. We continue to focus on decreasing the number of students who are approaching or below goal. And within the building, we're analyzing those results down to the student level as well. So despite there was obviously a significant increase in the scores in 2021, but as we look over time, we believe that we're still making progress from 2019 to the current time. This is our DIRG B ranking, as you've seen similar charts, and you can see we're in the same range as other schools within our DIRG. Some are higher, some are lower, but overall, very, very similar results for our eighth graders. This focuses on the English language arts assessment. And in the peach colored box over there, you can see those same 3 years compared over time for the 3 grade levels of grades 6, 7, and 8. In grades 6 and 7, we continue to hold our own and perform at a consistent level. Grade 8 is our focus really for this year to help increase the performance, increase focus on the test, on the format of the test, the vocabulary and the styles of questions. We think we have more work to do in that area so that it more accurately reflects the knowledge of our students. We continue to be working with the reading interventionists, the coordinators and teachers to analyze the results and make any adjustments as we need to. We are, as the high school mentioned, implementing the IABs again this year. And we've analyzed the time in test, which we know is a factor for our students. And actually, as we looked at it, third trimester, believe it or not, the spring of 8th grade, the students aren't as focused as they were in the first and second trimester, whether that's regarding core classes or whether that's SBAC. So we're working on some of that motivation as well to keep them engaged. Next is math. So if you look at the math off to the right of the peach chart, we are celebrating our 6th graders who are not just moving along steadily, but really made amazing growth this last year. So we are very proud of them. Grade 7 holding its own. And then we come to grade 8, whom we have acknowledged and we have a plan for already. One thing that we're excited about this year in grade 8 is that for the first time, all classes, pre-algebra and algebra in grade 8 will be going through our illustrative math program, and that's a first for them. In addition, we have a math coach, very excited about in 7th and 8th grade, and we just know the power of coaching. So grade 6 has had a math coach for years, and I think that we've seen what the consistency and fidelity of that kind of a program will do. So we're excited about bringing it to grade 8 and just the synergy of the coach and the coordinator and the curriculum. And we are just already excited for May. Can't wait to take the XBAC. Okay. This chart is showing you the average growth. This is the percent of students that actually reached or exceeded their own growth target. One thing you should know right away, and the state actually reminds us of this, they set a predicted goal of what that COVID year would be. So all the growth from last year is on a predicted goal, and they recommend that we not make any high stakes decision based on this. Not that Madison would anyway on one score, but that's something to watch for. Anyway, this shows it's consistent with the data that students struggling to maintain the growth are in grade 8 overall. Grade 7 math a little bit. Grade 7 still making strides in LA. Their math, again, is excellent. So kind of a common theme there for our 6th graders. So we're kind of still working to make sure that each of our students are achieving their own growth targets. This next chart refers to high needs. And I think Gail mentioned earlier, high needs is defined as special education, English language learners, and students on free and reduced lunch. The target for the high needs subgroups was higher in both subject areas, saw a bit of a drop this year. Really, the focus will be, we're going to continue the collaboration we already have between special ed and regular ed. We've already done that. I will be honest with you though, this year in 7 and 8, we are able to move the coach in there. And the coach working in 6th grade special ed, kind of sometimes separately, was really kind of dynamic. And so we're looking forward to that happening next year. Another thing we're excited about, our EL teacher is able to spend more time at Polson for the first time in a while. So already we have planned PD, and not massive PD in the auditorium. The teacher is going to each individual team and talking about their students and how can the teachers help those particular students. So really kind of targeted. So we're excited about that for our EL population as well. So flipping back to English language arts, what do the results show us? And we take a look at the 3 areas that are assessed on the Smarter Balance assessment of listening, reading, and then reading, writing, and research/inquiry. And you can see the percentage of students that are above goal, approaching goal, or below goal. And most of our grade 6 students are performing above or approaching the grade level standards. Grade 7 and 8, we know that reading and writing and research or inquiry are areas that we continue to work on. Regardless, it's always the goal to have more of our students above goal in the 3 areas that are assessed. And we work closely with our team to identify the reason why students are performing below standard and make sure there's a plan in place to help them make that individual progress and help them close the gap in their performance, regardless of whether they're high needs or not. So that's how we came up with our priorities. These are our priorities for writing. And this requires in-depth analysis of work with students with high needs, particularly to make sure that their goals are specific and attainable before we set new goals. We use our IEBs in an instructional manner, So instead of just giving the assessment and looking at the data, we use that to say, how can we use this as a teaching tool and provide training and be able to help the students learn from their experience. We have newly revised units that address the standards that are particularly focused on morphology and grammar, that are including the word meanings and editing, and really focused on specific targets that fit into these writing categories. We're teaching students how to answer questions more effectively. So they may be answering them, but on a superficial level and not getting sufficient credit for their responses, not spending enough time on it, giving that brief answer. So we're encouraging them to give more detailed answers to those open-ended responses. And then we have also started administering the research IAB with social studies, so that we're combining social studies and language arts, because there's a lot of overlap between the informational reading and writing skills. So that involves not just the integration for students, but also the collaboration between staff in those two departments as well. In reading, you can see our priorities here. We have reordered the units and particularly including the nonfiction and the text structures and features. So we make sure that they're taught before the test. Moving the test date has helped with that. It gives us more instructional time before they're showing their knowledge. But again, teaching them how to spend the time that they need to show their thinking. Continuing to work with the social studies teachers, having them do what they're learning in LA and having it transfer and be applicable in social studies and vice versa. So that there's a lot of collaboration between not just department meetings and the staff, but also data team meetings, looking at the information, looking at the results that we attain throughout the year, and then using them to create those small groups and instruction in order to benefit students. What do the results indicate in math? That sixth grade is doing very well. The majority of students performing at approaching or above. So we appreciate that. We have also been having more discussions with our specialists to determine how we can help those students who are right at the cusp move to that next level. And that really goes for all three grade levels. In terms of grade 8, again, we recognize the areas for growth that exist there. We do have plans in place. And when you look at all three areas, the one that we really want to focus on, and we will for all three grade levels, is communicating reasoning. So on the next slide, you'll see there our focus areas are giving students opportunities to communicate their thinking orally, in writing, through a diagram. It's not enough to know the right answer. You have to know how you got there and be able to explain that to someone articulately. So we will be focusing a lot on that small group partner work. So we're excited to do that for the students. We also will be, again, integrating the illustrative math across 7 and 8, integrating the coaches, having more math PLCs. And what I love about this, when you look overall at what we're doing with math, it's really about collaboration and communication. First, with the students, can they communicate their thinking? And they learn to do that by collaborating and speaking to each other. And then they become more articulate as they respond to the test questions. But it's also about communication and collaboration among the staff. So again, all elements for our staff, we have an amazing team this year, and we think that's going to be the key to moving math forward.
Thank you.
All right, it's all you.
Keep going.
Only appearance.
Why would you do?
What's that?
That's
I'm
fine.
fast in the clicker. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. So Brown School. We'll start with our
That's good.
we'll start with our science. Again, we take that in grade 5. You see our scores are consistent over the last 3 years of reporting, obviously without the 2020 scores there. We did have more students below the goal in 22 than 21, pretty consistent year to year with the number of students at or above goal. So, but we did have a dip, and that ties to a little bit to our math science goal I'll mention later, and that's in the area of perseverance. I think TJ talked about time on task or time on test. When we look at some kids, the test is hard for some kids, and then they just rush through it, and closure and, you know, I'm kind of done. So we're really looking at those numbers with those students. You can see where we fall. We were 10th of 17 in the DERG. I think that number was higher last year with about the same score. And again, that's 7.8 number of students below goal. I think it speaks a lot to the perseverance that we need to work with our kids. Obviously, that cohort's moving forward, but obviously all of our kids, we need to work with that, especially on the tougher problem solving in science and the math. When we get into our ELA assessments, you see the grade 4, 19 on the far right there, grade 4. That number, you see again, 19, 21, 22, pretty consistent in the previous year. We have 9.2 below goal and 16% approaching, and that will be our focus with our dedicated paraprofessional to our working with our students in small group. But we also are very impressive numbers of 51% above goal. So that's a strong number. And that's highest in all of our cohorts across the board there, as you can see. And in grade 5, you see that 83% is a very strong number as you compare it to the year before and then 2 years prior to that. Again, obviously different cohorts, but that 83%, we're going to continue to work with those 17% or approaching or below. And then our math, that clicked all right. In our math, 68% is consistent with the cohort when they were in grade 3. We have work to do in grade 5 with them. We've already worked to identify individual students, again, using our dedicated paraprofessional who works under the guidance of our math and LA coach to deliver small group tier 1 instruction. So we really focused on that group. The low number below, it is a low number below goal, which is 5.2. And again, we certainly want to move those students forward, as well as the 27% approaching. And the math in grade 5, you see again a 10% increase from last year. Those two numbers were the same in 19 and 21. Slight decrease in the cohort, but that's a strong number, 71. Our slides are similar with Paulson when we go to the targets. And again, that 2021, as Martha shared, that predicted number, we're very pleased in here, both grades, over half of the students met their growth targets. And when you see the number like 55.6 in ELA in grade 5, is certainly a very strong number, as is the 54.9 in math. But again, in grade 4, both were above 50%. So, it's hard to look at the 2021 number, right, Gail? I mean, really, we need to go back from that with that predicted number, especially when the number is 24.5 in that math. And much like Paulson, our ELA focus, we seem to be in a really good place with our high needs group. If you see that 64.7 number in ELA, and that's 62.7 in math, and I really attribute the work of the coaches in this area. Again, I have to remind you, the group is, it's special ed, ELL, free and reduced lunch, but our coaches set up consistent meetings with special education teachers in both LA and math. They worked with special ed teachers on IABs as well. Our coaches also worked closely and consistently with our ELL teacher. And again, we share someone who comes in and out of the building, but she was a lot more effective last year. There's a real presence in the building. And our coaches worked with her on a consistent basis. And again, she's also delivering some PD for us as we start the school year this year on the work she's doing with her students. So the results indicate in LA, in both grades, the below percentage relatively low. Grade 4 writing and research is a focus. That number was a little high, but overall we're pleased with the listening, reading, and writing in LA in both grades. in math, and we were discussing this today at a math department meeting, when you see the area of concepts and procedures, you know, are above or the highest across the board there, and are below or the low are also the highest, which is not what we want. So we're going to continue to, like I said, work with our math team and our supports, all of our instructional powers, but certainly the one dedicated for concepts and procedures as well as problem solving. And our ELA and math priorities, again, PLCs to review morphology, word study, instructional strategies, PD to assist teachers leveraging IABs as data source. And again, we'll continue, I think in October, our PD day is dedicated to data team meetings and really digging deep into each student at each grade level. And PD and coaching cycles related to small group instruction and differentiation. And in math, again, our PLCs to review student problem solving. And then I talked earlier about the PD and the coaching to assist teachers in developing student perseverance, really working with our students to fight through those times when they're just frustrated. You know, one teacher was sharing today how frustrated he was last year watching kids, you know, because you can't say anything when you're, you know, when the SBAC's going, and he's seeing a young guy just kind of like, he's like, you know, I know you know this, I know you can, you know, get through this, but so we're going to work on that. And we're going to work on our kids too, and then continue development of curriculum resources related to problem solving. All right.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. I'm going to invite Ryerson and Jeffrey.
That's the 18th.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us this evening. We get to share the first time that our students will take a standardized formal assessment such as this. I think there's a lot to celebrate tonight with our 8 and 9-year-olds who take it for the first time. So there's a lot to celebrate. And also, we've also looked at this with our leadership team as well as our coaches and our teachers to look at what will be our instructional focuses and our targets for this school year in both buildings.
Yeah. And I'm excited to be able to start off by sharing with you that success and celebration that Kelly spoke about in the area of ELA. So we were very pleased to see that across the K-3 level in our district, the vast majority, 78% of our students are really meeting the standard, meeting that mark of proficiency. When you break that down a little bit by school, I would ask that you focus on this orange chart on the right-hand side of the screen. We're looking at the data from 2019 to 21 to this past spring 22. And really, again, what we were celebrating is that if you look, take Jeffrey, for example, well, and both Ryerson actually, in 2019 to 2021, we saw a significant dip. And I don't think we need to spend any more time chatting about what happened in between the dip. So obviously, because we work in the amazing district that we do with a supportive Board of Education, in 2021, we knew we had to put some things in place to close those COVID gaps and the learning loss that we know took place for many of our students. So things like fully implementing the Foundations phonics program, K-3. Adding an additional reading interventionist at both schools and increasing our, we'll talk about math in a second, but math interventionists to full time. You also supported an extra classroom teacher for each building so that we could keep class sizes small. So all of that combined with the efforts of our instructional coaches, curriculum updates, the efforts of the teachers. Again, celebrating that Jeffrey went up 70 to 78%, Ryerson also up 70 to 78%. So exactly what we like to see, and confirming that the choices we made, the things we put in place were beneficial for students. We also break the ELA test down into some smaller subcategories that we can look at specific strands in terms of listening, reading, and writing, research, and inquiry. When you break it down by school, you can see really that listening and reading across the two buildings are really usually our strongest points. This is something that we see time and time again. Writing happens to be a weaker area on the SBAC tests, but it also kind of matches what we know about kids developmentally. There's tons of research out there. We consult with UConn professor and researcher Rachel Gabriel, and she talks a lot about how the decoding piece, the reading, will often develop much more quickly and before the encoding piece of the writing. Encoding, or the act of writing, just takes a significant amount more skills to get a thought from your head through the paper. So it's not a surprise to us that that writing area also always comes up as an area in need of growth. So we look at that piece, and we'll talk about what we're going to do to address the concerns with writing and inquiry in a moment. But I'm going to let Kelly go over the math results. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you. And a lot of what Becky has said is, I will reiterate again for the math portion. I do believe that 79% of our students at grade 3 district-wide at or above proficient is a celebration. And I think it comes because of the result of putting people, resources in place for consistency and fidelity and support for our teachers, which results in student growth and development. Those are big decisions, but big payoffs, right? So we have math interventionists and math coaches who are consistently supporting both our teachers and our students at the same time. I also think that there are key structures and systems in place in our buildings that help support this on a day-to-day basis. So our data team meetings, they really are drilling down throughout a school year, looking at what our cohort is performing well at and where the areas of deficiencies are that we can identify and put into small tier 1 groups to target those areas. We have those systems in place, but then we are continuing to progress monitor those students. So our small groups are fluid and they're changing based on performance. And I think that that's so critical to capitalize on, because it's every day that these teachers are doing this, and the results are scores such as this. We will look at areas that we continue to need to grow and develop with, but I think that's always going to be the game, right? So I think the PLC systems that we have in place, the people resources that we have in place, and the ongoing consistent structures and systems that we have in place really do speak to the high numbers that we're very proud of. I think Becky really capitalized as well. The little peach box, 2021 to 2022, the level of growth and progress at both schools should really be the celebration. And we won't exhaust any more of the 2021 and what that was a cause or result of. Again, this breaks it up into the subsets that are at each school, at each subset in the math, which is the communicating and reasoning, concepts and procedures, and the problem solving. And we'll talk about, where the performance was in each one of those subsets for each school in the next slide. We varied looking at where we will focus. So we really delved deep at both schools with the support of our coaches, our team leaders, and our teachers as to how we performed on the 2022 results, and looking at what would be our next steps. And we look at this as a school because we talk about it all the time, that they will take the test in 3rd grade, but they don't learn everything they need to know for the Smarter Balance assessment in 3rd grade. That's from kindergarten on. So we all have a hand in that. So it is a school effort. So everyone had a voice in what we are going to focus on in the area of math. Becky and I have talked as well, and the Jeffrey focus, and Becky will talk about it in a moment. It will be on concepts and procedures, and Ryerson will be on communicating and reasoning.
So based on that data, along with a myriad of other data points. Every year we set school goals. At Jeffrey this year, in terms of just looking at the SBAC and what we'd like to focus on and support our students with, again, our coaches are going to be working right alongside teachers in that area of writing, research, and inquiry. And at Jeffrey School, we selected computation as a focus area, really going along with that concepts and procedures. So while I'm just going to go back for a slide, you do see that 66% of our students are above proficiency with concepts and procedures. My teachers really wanted to go deep with those, that 23 and 11% of students who are not there yet, and really make sure those computational skills are really fluent and efficient, because we know as the math gets harder, that's a skill that they're going to need. At Jeffrey this year, we also have an overarching school goal. It's one that kind of really hits at more of the portrait of a graduate skills and some of the social emotional learning. And really what teachers saw and communicated in our end of year surveys last year is that they would really like to support students, no matter what the topic or content is, with the skills of perseverance and problem solving, really teaching students how to use a growth mindset, that when they get to a problem and something gets hard, they don't give up. And we need to give them a toolbox, a skill set to do that with, so that when the writing gets hard, or when those math facts, you just can't get the 6, 7s, and 8s with your multiplication facts, you have some things that you can pull out and try, and hopefully will be successful with.
Great. How about Ryerson? Ryerson, we focused on these two areas and what we together. So these can be a focus area, whether it is math or ELA, both areas, because it really speaks to the oral and written communication. So we're looking at writing and research, and I know you've heard that as a theme, but it does start early on, looking at how well they can articulate their thinking, both verbally and in written form, and be able to look back and revise and edit. I think as adults, we don't like to revise and edit our work. And that speaks to Becky's talking about perseverance. That certainly will tie very well into that. As well as communicating and reasoning, how well we can explain our thinking and provide viable arguments and answers to how we reach the solution with which we are landing on. We have many of our teachers who have selected writing this year as their professional growth goal. So that will be something that we are looking at across Ryerson, both in instructional rounds with our coaches, and looking at ways that we can continue to provide ongoing professional development with the end goal of having it transfer to students' independent writing across ELA and in math. We're very proud of our PLC meetings. They have very solid structures and systems in place. This summer, we spent a great deal of time building the leadership capacities of our team leaders so that they are consistent each week in looking at student work and sharing best practices. And so the best practices and the sharing that they will be doing is research and new learning as it relates to those two areas identified. And then, as well as, I believe we have the best coaches around. And so really capitalizing on their expertise and using them throughout the coaching cycles for all of our teachers. So we're excited about our work. We thank you again for your support. This couldn't have been possible without the support of the Board of Education and the people resources that you've provided. So thank you.
Really, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to thank the team again for the time they put into this presentation and the time that they put into their buildings, looking at lots of information across the board. One of the things I wanted to remind the board about was that in 2019, 2020, we made the decision as a district to take all of the coaches in the district and we redeployed them down to the elementary schools. We felt that that was a powerful commitment to our youngest learners. But of course, we recognize that supports for teachers at Brown and Polson were not the same during that period of time. So we have reinstated everybody back to where they belong, but definitely that redeployment, I think, helped us to recover a bit of learning that our youngest kids really needed support in. I also wanted to remind the board that we assess student learning at lots of different levels. We have our universal screens that are ongoing 3 times a year, but we also assess our students against Portrait of a Graduate and higher level thinking. One of the differences between the Math Smarter Balanced Assessment and the ELA Smarter Balanced Assessment is that the Math Smarter Balanced Assessment has a performance task with it. And that means that the kids are actually authentically doing work at a higher level in that task. Because the Smarter Balance, when it came out, struggled a bit with the scoring of the performance task for ELA, they took that part out. But that part is the one that is most familiar to our kids. The multiple choice and the highlighting the sentence that best describes a paragraph is a bit foreign and clunky to them compared to authentically explaining where they see meaning in a paragraph. So that is a huge difference. But also we, Ching and Sheila shout out, we are in the process of doing our first what we call data vizzes for our PLCs. And that actually takes some of that assessment information in district and creates great graphics for our teams. And it helps them to drill down, see patterns at a big level, and then also drill down. So those are really positive pieces that I wanted to share with you tonight. But I would like to invite the board to ask any questions that they might have at this time. And the team is here and available to help answer as well.
Floor is open.
Actually, I have a question about Brown School. So I understand that in order to exit the focus school status, you need to have continued growth in 2 consecutive years, and 2020 to 2021 does not count. So the 2021 to 22 would be the first year, and so this year then would be the second year. Is that correct?
No,
No, that's not. Is that not right?
so it's super tricky. And Dr. Cook, I'm going to invite you to jump in as you see fit. We actually have called the state, I think, last year and this year to really inquire about how they were looking at focus schools and what they were using to determine, and to, make a case for using the information from 2020, 2021 to consider for focus school exit status. And at this point, what they're using, the Polson School has a year credit in 1819, so that has 1 year of credit for 1819. And this year would be a second year if in fact we hit all the qualifiers, but we won't know that yet. Brown School looks to have its first year of credit this year would be the projection. So it would need 1 more year. Did I miss anything in that?
No, I think that's completely accurate. I think our frustration is that there is the data there for them to be able to calculate the positive results from 2020, 2021 that we achieved. I think that we made some of those changes you saw last year, you saw this year in the testing assessment, and how we approached it, that achieved positive results. And we've asked them to consider that when they do their calculations. So we feel they have the data to be able to do that. They said by that not testing in 1920, which we support, that was the right move, certainly in that scenario. But by doing that and then not counting the next year, we're almost being penalized for that. So we are continuing our discussions up the kind of chain at the State Department, hoping that they'll reconsider that initial position.
And have they said that they will reconsider it?
They have said at this point, we got to know. Gail and I were on about an hour-long Zoom with 2 members of the state. We got a pretty hard no, and then they asked us to just kind of wait and see how this year's results turn out. That it could be exited regardless, but I think our plan was to continue to push that up the chain at the state level.
All right, so then the results from this year, which would be this coming spring, count as the second year or the first year?
No, they have not calculated the final growth per school from last year's test. They have pretty much they have all the data. I think that they just haven't done that, but if that doesn't result, we may have to wait a whole another year to kind of find out where we stand. But again, we will continue to push that issue.
Well, that's frustrating.
It's frustrating. I think for the majority of the state, it makes sense. For the majority of the state, it was the past due to a pandemic that, I think students and teachers deserved. I think it's just that we, as a district, showed some really strong growth in that year. And I think rightfully so. I think our teachers did a fantastic job and our administrators did an amazing job of making sure students understood the importance or families understood the importance. So we're hoping that we achieve a positive result one way or the other.
I have a comment, if I could. First of all, thank you so much for being here this evening, and also for all the work that goes into all of that, because that's a lot, and I know that, and I appreciate your time and efforts. I have to make a comment about the effectiveness of coaching, and how much I recognize that human resource as being impactful in a lot of growth that happens. And I just want to say again, to the board and to you, that how important it is for us to really keep that in mind as we think about the types of support we give to the schools, because I think it really is, it not only was something that came up during the conversation around gathering the information to bring to this tonight, but it also shows that they're like drones in the hive. They go back and they work in the PLCs, then they work individually with teachers, and they think about working with where else can we make the honey, and it really is an important aspect of successful schools. And so I just want to mention that. Any human resource, I think, is it's important for us to keep that in mind. Human resources are really what, curriculum doesn't teach children, it's people and teachers who teach children. And so I think it's important for us to help develop that. I thought it was curious about how the middle school, like our 8th grade, I think about how when we were in the pandemic with my own children, but also just as an educator myself, that grade level, how impacted they were by the lack of social time. Like, it makes me just, my wheels are turning about how impactful it was for our kids who are now currently in 8th grade, and how hard learning is without your peers and your teachers. And again, back to that human aspect of learning, it's it's everything. And so it's just a curious point to me. Also, the whole attitudes around test taking and test importance. I think for a long time there's been thinking around, like, let's not stress our kids out, and then we end up with a little bit of having to figure out how we can re-engage them in that, because test taking is it's an important piece of education, but it's not everything. And I think that talks to my next point, which is the whole idea about how our students are performing so well in performance-based assessment, which is really the real life tasks of what we do on a daily, right? And so the fact that our kids perform much better at real life performance tasks that are really the way we live our lives and do our work every day as human beings in the real world. We're not taking standardized tests every day but we are performing tasks together collaboratively and also individually. And I think that our students' ability to do that, we're putting great people out into the world. So I think that it's important to mention that as well. And that's my last point.
I'll go next because we're just sort of going in order. Thank you. It's a lot of information and it's really important to see. I feel like I need a lot of time to digest it all. Some things I just wanted to note that I appreciate, like the significant jumps in participation. That was pretty fantastic. And I was going to ask, but you answered that, Gail, about the messaging to teachers and to students. I think that's significant. It is significant to see those participation rates jump. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate how everyone noted, areas for improvement or work plans, like what we're doing with this data moving forward, how the data is being used to inform the goals for the schools and the goals for the teachers. I appreciate that also. Gail, you mentioned, this is one of many forms of assessment. So thinking about the eighth graders again, I have an eighth grader, so I was very interested in that. I hope he's not bringing down the numbers. But
Single-handedly.
You never know.
Remember these eighth graders from last year.
Right, but
They are
yes,
now ninth.
yes, yes. So, but that age group, which I think just wait, don't worry. We'll get there. But that age group, like you said, Kathy, about how it's different for that group, but I'm curious if you've seen those in other assessments for that age group, if you've seen them struggling in other ways, or if you've seen that reflected in other assessments other than these numbers.
I would say not to that degree.
Okay.
I think we were a little surprised at
Okay.
their performance. But I think it's important to note too, our eighth grade class the year prior jumped 20% at
Right.
above goals. So they were like extraordinarily, strong in that particular assessment. In that particular year, I would say that there is a cohort that we are tracking a bit in that grade level that is impactful.
Yeah.
But I would say overall, it was lower than what we thought it would be based on our in-house assessments.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That was one other thing, and I don't know if you all have comments or not, but if there was anything else that sort of surprised you when you saw the numbers that made you look twice or really wonder or cause some concern when you saw.
I think by and large, one of the things that I noticed just on my end is impact of attendance on things like that. So, we had some struggles in attendance, as I think lots of districts did. Again, when you have a small number, then a few people or a few cases can really change your picture. And that's true on every level. So, attendance is huge, getting kids in school is huge. So for some area districts that are struggling just to have kids attend, I really feel for them, because you can show a high degree of accomplishment on this assessment without getting kids in school.
Thank you. Thanks, Holly.
I guess I'm next.
I wanted to ask Martha, Catherine, anything you guys wanted to add or that you noticed?
No, I think you summarized that, and I think there are some things that we're looking at in particular that is driven by some of those results, Emily, from eighth grade. For example, they would take it, making sure that all the students take it with the teachers who teach them that subject area. And already planned for this year, instead of taking it throughout the day, we're creating a special schedule that then blocks off the first extended period of the day and then continues afterwards. So we've done a variety of different ways, but I think when we see scores, when you ask what was surprising, we were surprised by eighth grade. I don't think we were expecting them to be the way they were. But that is cause for reflection and say, well, what can we do differently to help set those kids up for success? So there are a couple of those things that we're working on.
No, I just like to say, we see the results in aggregate. And I know that behind all the number crunching that you do and all the myriad other concerns that you're going above and beyond, because I know you you take the time to know and care about each kid individually, and that's really important. So I just want to thank you all for that.
One of the things that I noted and I would like to highlight is that as you were finding areas for improvement and you're creating exposure points for the kids, the students to experience different styles of test taking, we're continuing to not teach to the test. And I think that's really important that the kids are getting the exposures because you don't know as they move through their educational journey where they'll find those things, but we're staying true to our mission of the way that we teach in Madison. So that is much appreciated.
I'd like to thank you all very much. It was very enlightening for me being on the board for the first time. Going back to the 8th graders, I was a school nurse in 8th grade, and I think that it has a lot to do with their age and a lot to do with the pandemic added on to that. And I think you're going to see those 9th graders are going to do real well this year.
I turn off the mic that goes into my ears. I want to thank you all for a comprehensive presentation, and I understand presenting to the board is an accountability measure. This is where we are based on a period of time and our efforts, and this is the data. And summative assessments and data is not going away, and it continues to have meaning. But what I particularly appreciated, and I think we need to evolve to, both for the board and for the general public that watches these, is to help them understand what that data means and what it means to you. Because there's things up there that we really have no way of knowing. Is that a particular cohort of students? Is that a particular subset of teachers? You know, and it isn't critical that we know that. What I particularly appreciated in the presentations tonight is what you do with that data. How you say, this is what we think is impacting on it. These are the factors, the sources, the plans we had. Some of them panned out, some of them panned out really well, some not so much. But what we're going to do with that data, and particularly, you know, I particularly appreciated the Ryerson and Jeffrey presentation because it titrated down to, and then this is what we do, and this is how we reformulate groups, and this is how we then have it inform the instruction, because in the end, you know, what the parents want and what the board wants is for all the students to have deep, authentic learning. And I get it because I've been there. You know, I know how to raise the scores, and so do you. You know, we spend time teaching kids how to take the test, the scores are going to go up. And that's a balancing act. Should they know how to do it? Yeah. But what's more important is what I hear you saying about the week in, week out, day-to-day work of using your PLCs, using your data teams. I love hearing that we reformulate groups based on that data and mastery and where kids attain it. Because that's a shift from big groups and cohorts and the test to how does it respond to the kids? So I thank you for the presentation. And I thank you for the interpretation of it. And, you know, I encourage, I mean, we have a lot to present, but the real important information from my perspective is what you do with that data, because that ultimately, that's what makes the difference. So thank you.
Do we have anybody in the audience, the virtual audience, who has a question or comment? All right. Well, I think we can conclude that part then, and thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
So as they're leaving the room, I will just say, a few times we talked about that the data that we're using as a district and what we're putting in the hands of administrators and teachers. And so I hope that at some point, maybe in the next month or two, we can present, and we can do this in a really short format, is the data that the new data system that Gail's department has been working on, what we've been given to the schools. So I think it'd be good for the board to see a short presentation on the data viz that you mentioned a few times.
Can we give Ching and Sheila an honorary doctorate?
We'll talk to the executive committee about that. I meant the presentation.
Thank you. Next we move on to a discussion of the revised CIP plan, a copy of which you should have in front of you. And there are a lot, well, the direction was the same, but there was a lot of changes. Maybe I should let Emily
Sure.
kick off that
Yeah.
because we're facilities meeting today.
Yep. So I'll give a brief overview. So this, you'll see there is an action on the agenda tonight for us to take on this, and Bill is online, right, Wendy, if there's any questions?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll let you know, Bill. So the facilities committee met again today, a special meeting to again review the CIP. So this is all familiar information to you and an ongoing conversation. So basically, we brought it back for another revision, which you see in front of you tonight. And I'm going to walk you through it, and Dr. Cook, jump in as you see fit too. As Dr. Cook said, we got some good news and bad news from the town. The good news was that the town plans to make influx of funding into the CIP that would impact the 23-24 and 24-25 years. So that allows us to maintain the commitment to the HVAC at DHHS and some of the important projects at Brown School as part of the renewal plan. For the following 3 years, 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, we've been asked to come in around $1 million each year so as to not impact taxes and so on. This doesn't mean that we won't be able to necessarily do more if we receive grants, if projects come in less than budgeted. But this current model is what we need to move forward. Also, Dr. Cook mentioned, as we are going out for bonding for our school projects, it is important that we show a positive model as part of those requests. So Dr. Cook and Bill McMinn did some hard work around the schools, touring facilities, meeting with faculty and the athletics director. In particular, some concerns about certain fields, which I'll talk about. So the new revisions that you'll see in front of you, basically no changes to the district-wide total on page 1 for security. No changes to Daniel Hand. HVAC is where it is, because we all know that that's important. At Brown School, so pretty much everything stayed as put since the last revision. This is, I think, revision 4 that's in front of us today. Parking stayed there for year 2, millwork, some window replacement, the kindergarten playground. All those things have been left in as is. Nothing new from last time. Athletics, we did, Bill and Craig did move some stuff around. So tennis courts are left where they are. Really don't feel that we can move the baseball field any further from 25, 26. In particular, because this is tied to the Folsom geothermal work, and they'll be digging up the baseball field for that work. Bill thinks that possibly the number could come down. As we plan out, we recognize that numbers might change, and certainly as you look ahead out 10 years, numbers are more and more expensive because they're working in at 4% inflation rate every year. So something also might have to move if we receive grants, or if we need to move around the order of things based on projects like geothermal, et cetera. So the final plan now that you'll see is closer, $11.5 million over the 5-year plan. We were at $28 million when we started this process. Yeah, that's sort of where we are. One thing that they did have concerns about is the high school track the inner field, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on that as well. So that's in front of you. Craig, do you want to add anything, or did I?
No,
cover
that
the
was good,
bases okay?
Real good coverage of it. This is as been shared, this is our third redo of this. It's not typical. We'd go this late, but the town has asked us to get it back to them by October 1. So we asked that the board approve this as reported tonight. And in many years, we're only focusing on the 1 year out for the most part. We're really, that's the year that we're asking the town to fund. We took a 5-year look because we are, as a town, looking to bond funding for the new school. So as we go to bonding, they will be looking at our plans on how this matches up with tax implications for the town and reserve funds and things like that. So we feel this puts us in a really good spot for that. And we'll be back at this again, next year to consider it. Not that it's even done this year, that it still has to go through the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, but I do think we get some important projects done in the next 2 years for us. As a civil district.
I did forget one thing, at Polson, we did split up and move the 88 doors, hardware and bathrooms over 6 and 7 years. Before it was over 3 years. So you will see those funds spread out more. I forgot to mention that in my report. I see Bill's face. Hi, Bill. Is there anything that that you want to add or clarify? Bill knows everything, as we know, and we'll move mountains to try to make this work for us. So we sure do appreciate him.
Happy to do it. I think you explained it very well. I'm here for questions.
Do folks have questions, or can we have discussion now?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let's do that.
I know.
Or do you want to like make the motion first?
Yeah,
and
okay,
then
let's do
we'll
that.
discuss?
All right, so we need a motion to approve the revised CIP plan dated September 20th, 2022. Got a motion? Oh, she got you first, just a second.
Oh.
All right, thank you. All right. And now let's, okay. And let's open the floor for discussion and questions.
So I have some comments.
Yeah.
I would expect nothing.
Okay, so when we're looking at Polson, and we're talking about the door hardware updates, an ADA and a bathroom ADA update. We've moved a lot of it. If you compare, I don't know if you guys have the old copy, but the old copy had, and by old I mean the last version.
When we
The 2023-24 was at 368, 238, and that number was repeated over the next 5 years for the bathroom ADA update. And I'm not exactly sure, and Bill, you can speak to this, exactly what like each year was going to be done. But the new version has it with those two numbers being the first 2 years, and then the rest of it is spread out with the following 4 years being 50,000 apiece, and then the last year, which is 2029, 2030, which is a significant time change, is 948,903. And so my concern is pushing bathroom ADA updates so across such a long period of time. I know that not all the bathrooms are not compliant and not all of them are compliant. And I guess I just see that as a bigger priority to get the bathrooms to be compliant. I know you said they're fully functioning and that there's nothing like they're not broken, but some of them are not exactly ADA compliant. And it concerns me that's taking a backseat. I would prefer to see it done in a more timely fashion than over that many years. And I don't really know like what intends to be done over the years that it's kind of lean at 50,000 a year. Is it like, well, we'll do like this one bathroom, or like I don't really understand the breakup.
Sure, I'm happy to explain. If you see the first year, we have $96,850 in right now to come up with a detailed plan. And my approach is I have started to look into that to come up with a plan. And I can plan based on the funding available. And for $50,000, I could really spend a lot of money to renovate a bathroom relative to, say, some fixtures and changing partitions, but not renovating like wholesale renovating like I'm imagining some of these buildings, these bathrooms are gonna have to be, moving walls, taking down doorways, expanding the footprint of the bathroom into some other area, and changing them significantly. But with 50,000, you could just, remove the fixtures, put new partitions in, and not change, say, the wall fixtures that are down to the ground. So we could pick away at some of the non-aggressive bathrooms and come up with a plan. So there is no specific plan. What we did when we first originally did the estimate, we counted all the bathrooms up. We talked to contractors who have been doing this kind of work, and we, did a square footage on the number of bathrooms we had and came up with an overall plan. Now we're just trying to fund it. So my expectations are the first 2 years, years 1 and 2, we would be aggressive on the more highly used bathrooms, the ones that needed the most work, that were the public, that the public uses. And then we would continue to do what we could over the, say, the non-lean years, the 50,000, the smaller bathrooms. And then we would look at what we needed to complete, in the 5, 6, 7, 8 years, or I'm not 7, 8, but, the following year. So we would build the plan based on the funding available.
And is the 948 really high because of escalation? Is that my understanding?
Yes, thank you. So when we moved it out, I added 4% per year. And we all know that, the 4% adds on every year. So it's a significant amount of money. And we'll reevaluate after the first 2 years, we'll reevaluate. The number is going to change. Will it go up? I don't think so. I think that because we did a very good analysis on what the actual costs were from existing projects. And then we added the 4% in. I don't expect it to go up. I expect it to change some. And just like all our projects, if we're working on a bathroom and we're modifying the bathroom and we disturb the room next to it, we try to, keep our project, and we use the funds to enhance the schools. So we'll do whatever we can with the funds and the resources available, and we'll make the building better. And I think it's adequate amount. And I think we could spread it out over 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. It's going to be a good plan, because we're going to be doing significant improvements to a building that, started in 1960. We added on a few times, but really the bathrooms and the fixtures work. It's just like we live in New England. You've gone into old bathrooms where the fixtures are old, but they're in working order. The building's clean, the tiles original, the wall. We have very high-end glazed block that we put it in the 60s, so it still looks good, but it's dated. So I don't know if we'll leave that, probably not. That's why the money's so big, and we're going to have to move some walls to make them more acceptable to today's standards. We do have ADA bathrooms. We wanted to have more of them.
Thank you. A follow-up question to that then, which is kind of related, but kind of not. So I guess, when I think about how often a bathroom is being used in a school and its accessibility and the importance of that, and then I look at, say, Brown School, and I look at millwork replacement in year, 24, 25 at 198,000. Like, I wonder, what is the millwork replacement, and how is that more important than the ADA update?
So the millwork, the building was built in 1970, and so the millwork is tired and old. And once again, I had someone to help me do a takeoff on what millwork costs. And, I'll be honest, some of the millwork at Brown is so bad that we've taken it out and we haven't replaced it. So it will be an aggressive, plan to enhance the school classrooms with millwork that we had to either remove or that isn't really functioning well or is dated. There's no more important thing. It was just on the plan. And I think that we target Brown School to try to enhance it to be more compatible with the new school that we're building downtown. So I think that we want to make sure that we do everything we can to bring Brown School up to today's standards. And I think we have over the years. We put a lot of money into Brown and we significantly upgraded a lot of things. One of the ones we haven't is the millwork. And if you go into a classroom with, elementary schools, it's the cubbies and the spaces for the kids to keep their stuff. I don't know, and, I haven't talked to the principal and we're not ready to, but, what's a third grade classroom want? What's a fourth grade classroom want? What's a fifth grade classroom want? Because those, that was a middle school millwork. We're not going to put the same back in. Well, I think that,
It's not like trim. It's not like.
no, they're cabinets.
Functional
they're-
cabinetry, et cetera.
Yes, yeah. And the best way I can describe it is in the elementary schools, they're cubbies or places they store their stuff and they're really used a lot. In the middle school, in which it was, there were bigger cabinets, for science stuff. And, we've torn a lot of that out, but I still think that we need to address it because we need to put some stuff back in for the third, fourth, and fifth grade classrooms. And I don't have a specific plan. I just had a square footage based on what was there and what needs to be put back. And we don't have a specific plan, but we will do an enhancement of the classrooms based on input from the teachers, hiring professionals to help me with the design that know what third, fourth, and fifth grade classrooms traditionally have.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. Not as exciting as the classroom credits and exams and tests. That's all good stuff.
They're excited about it.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, that's why we're here. If we don't have classrooms that they can learn in, we want the space to be nice and comfortable for them.
You got it. We need to reduce.
That was very helpful. Thank you, Bill.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the time.
Are there other questions or comments for Bill? He'll answer.
Would love to answer that. Great detail.
No, thank you, Bill.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
Thank you. Kia.
Well, hearing no further questions, shall we put it to a vote? All in favor of approving the revised CIP plan dated September 20th, 2022? Aye. Opposed? No abstentions, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure.
You'll get our tough now without a meeting.
Board time. Olivia Phipps.
You never know. Not on my millwork yet.
Is there any old business that we'd like to bring up? Okay. You're welcome to submit ideas for future agenda items. We have meetings and dates of report that's attached to the back of your packet. And with that, I guess we'll call for adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn. Jen?
Second.
Thanks, Ellen. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And motion, the meeting is adjourned at 9:05.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.